Welcome. Thanks for joining us here today. Many of you are probably familiar with me, some probably aren't. If you're not, my name is John Preston, and I spent over a decade working in the local magazine world. Had a very rewarding career, first as a publisher, launched 4 magazines in Kentucky, and then as a leader developing magazines across Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. Overall, probably helped launch over 100 magazines. I always loved working with publishers to help them be better successful with their magazines. But what I really enjoyed was helping them help their customers be more successful. I am an absolute believer that local magazines are the single best tool for helping small local businesses succeed and grow in a world that favors the large corporations. So I love helping people who do magazines learn how to help their customers better, which in turn makes for stronger magazines. But that's not why we're here today. Today, we're here for a more basic problem. I used to see publisher after publisher after publisher struggle, not because they didn't know what to do. All of the major companies have tremendous training, have tremendous support in the local magazine world. But when push came to shove, so many people simply could not take action. I've talked to people at beginning levels, at advanced levels, and everywhere in between who knew exactly what they needed to do to take their magazine and their success to the next level, but simply couldn't do it. I've spent the last 18 months trying to figure out what the invisible barrier is that stops people from taking action. That's why we're here today. So I won't delay any longer because I want you to start to understand that barrier that stops you from moving forward in those times when you know exactly what to do and just struggle doing it.
I want to start off with an uncomfortable truth. You have goals. You got desires for your life. You have places that you want to be, things you want to accomplish. You've got a great product. As I mentioned, I don't think there's a better tool for helping small businesses than the local magazine. You've been trained well. There's great training and great support. You've got a roadmap to success. You've got everything laid out about what exactly it takes to get to where you want to be, but you're just not following the roadmap. So that leads to the question, am I where I want to be with my magazine? Do I know that I would make more sales if I did more appointments? Absolutely. No brainer. Finally, do I know I'd make more sales if I practiced my presentation, my closed handling objections, and got better at doing those things? Of course I do. I know where I want to go, and I know exactly what would take me there. Then why don't I do them? If you're like me, you've asked yourself that question 1,000 times. I've been there. I launched 4 magazines. Been that guy that sit there staring at the phone for hours, not calling. I've been that guy that literally made up things to do that felt like work to avoid making those calls. I half-assed presentations to avoid coming across as too pushy. I've avoided handling an objection even though I knew exactly what I was supposed to say. And I've ghosted clients and potential clients because I didn't want to deal with bad news. And then that's when I start dealing with those internal questions. All of those internal discussions that take place when we're not doing those things we know we need to do to be successful. There's a deeper core issue in play right now that is stopping people in all walks of their life from taking the actions they need to do to live better lives. What no one tells you when you go into business for yourself, no one tells you that we all have an inner voice that is a complete jackass. It's there. And this inner voice, it remains quiet when we have a job. I can't tell you how many people have told me over the years, I just don't understand. In my last job, I rocked it. I made sales every day with that. I made my phone calls. I did all of those things I needed to do. When you have a job, that voice is tempered. That voice only gets loud when suddenly you're the one making all of the decisions and you're in charge. It's driven by fear and it sees itself as your protector. So anything that is going to put you, your identity, or your physical being in danger, it tries to avoid. That makes decisions that involve risk and change and uncertainty very difficult to make. Everything you go to do is an argument within yourself because the things you need to do to grow involve risk, change, and uncertainty, and your inner voice is always fighting you. The other thing you need to know, that voice is much louder and harder to manage now than it ever has been in human history. From most of human history, every decision we made was either based on avoiding real, tangible threats. Not going to stick my head in that cave because there's a bear in there. That's an easy decision. Or was made by monitoring resources. Is my water supply running out? Is my food supply running out? That was the core foundation for all of the decisions that we've made throughout most of human history. We don't live in that world anymore. Until recently, there was very little new data to process on a daily, weekly, and annual basis. Imagine you're living in the little house on the prairie. How much new information did your brain have to process in the course of a day? What new decisions did you have to make? More change will occur in the world during the course of this webinar than used to occur in whole decades. Our brain is not equipped to handle that. So our brain is living in a constant state of overwhelm. And all of this overwhelm, we turn back to our original foundation, fear of threats and fear of limiting resources. So I want to introduce you to a new framework I'm looking at. It's called Sleary. And it's a new way of kind of understanding these barriers that are stopping you from moving forward. Sleary is an acronym that stands for self-doubt, limited beliefs, exhaustion, anxiety, regret, and your own ego. The best way to think about Sleary and how it impacts your life is to think of a clogged drain. When the drain's empty, the water flows smoothly. But when the drain starts to clog, what happens? The water flow slows. Traditional motivation adds Sleary. You see all these podcasts where people are motivating you and driving you, and you get so excited to move forward. But then that clog clicks in, and you don't know where to start. And what happens? Regret and shame increases, and suddenly you're less likely to move forward. So the very things you were trying to use to get yourself to take action have clogged the drain even further. When somebody looks at you and says, just get off your ass and go do it, does it actually help you go do it? Or does it make it less likely for you to do it because it just reminds you of all your failures? There's a Sleary shame loop that comes into play. It starts very simply. You know what you need to do. You know the action you need to take. And the one most common in the magazine world is to make calls. Because our brains are so overwhelmed, They lack the natural ability to prioritize under pressure. And so everything on our to-do list feels equally urgent and equally important. So we choose to do other things that are more enjoyable or easier to do. Our growth stalls or it never starts, and we feel guilt. I should have made those calls. I should have taken those actions. We feel ashamed for our failure to do it. And then that shame pours grease in the sink. And the more clogged that drain becomes, the harder it is to take action, and the whole cycle starts over again. When we have a job, we don't struggle with a lot of these things. And the reason we don't is we're borrowing someone else's system. Their expectations of what we have to do to stay employed are the systems that keep the water flowing. When we remove those systems, that's when the drain starts to clog. In sales, these clogs happen in various points during the process, and they all can result in the same thing. They can result in a lack of action. So the first is obviously when we're scheduling appointments. This is where I see it in just about everybody, no matter where they are. Here's where the Sleary shows up. That fear of failure. What if I can't do this? That inner voice really likes to protect our fragile ego. That fear of being laughed at, that fear of the unknown, not knowing if you're going to be able to handle what situation comes up. And all that comes back to this fear will look ridiculous and look stupid. We start to say things, who am I to interrupt somebody's day? What if they're in the middle of eating supper when I call? And all of those things is your Sleary basically stopping that water from leaving the drain. Why would they want to talk to me? The next place it shows up is in the presentation. You start feeling that I'm afraid I'm going to screw up. I'm afraid I'm not going to say just exactly the right thing I'm supposed to say. What if I don't come across as believable? What if I don't come across as knowledgeable? I'm wasting their time if they don't buy. All of those things are forms of Sleary that stop you from doing action within the presentation. The next place it shows up is in the close. That fear of being too pushy, that fear of being one of those sales guys, the lot lizard in the plaid sports coat that's forcing people to buy a junker of a car. Those things is where that inner voice is trying to protect our identity and is more worried about what someone will think than it is about helping this customer grow their business and therefore growing your business. When it comes to objections, we're terrified that if we push back, we're going to be seen as argumentative or we're going to not be liked. And that's where that voice kicks in and tries to protect our identity because we want everybody to like us. Do you want to be successful? Not everybody's going to like you. You want to help a business, you're going to have to tell them things that they don't want to hear sometimes. When I first started, a business owner would tell me, oh, I get all my business by word of mouth. And I'd say something like, okay, well, I'll check back with you in a couple months and see if it changes. If I were to make a list of all the businesses that told me that in 2015, when I was first getting started, none of those businesses are around. Nobody survived. So even though I knew his business was going to fail if I walked out the door without pushing a little harder, trying to educate him, I did it anyway.
Your Sleary, if you can't get it under control, costs a lot of people a lot of things. Obviously, it costs you. It's impossible for you to have the life you want if every time you're put in a decision-making situation, you freeze up. If you're not able to move forward when you need to take action, you're not going to have the life you want. It's as simple as that. It also affects your customers and potential customers. The businesses in your community need your help. They may not know it. They may, in fact, be absolutely convinced they don't. But because you have the best product for helping them in the market, if you're not getting in front of them and properly explaining what you can do to help them, their chances of survival go way downhill. And finally, it impacts the community. Your magazine is capable of so much good in the community. The good stories you share, the good vibes you share, the way you make people proud to live where they do is a great break from all of the other negative taking place. And the more advertisers you bring into your magazine, the more pages you can add, the more robust it becomes, and the more impact you can have on the community. So your Sleary costs you in all these ways. Now, I know you've tried to stop freezing. The problem is you try to fix everything and you end up fixing nothing. The water just isn't flowing. We've all been there where we try to fix it, but we just simply can't. Now, I've worked with a lot of people. I've worked with people that simply can't call. Work with people that can't close. I've worked with people that freak out during the presentation. And here's what always happens. When your product gets challenged, you hesitate. When pressure hits, you start second guessing your message. And in that moment, when action is required, you don't trust yourself. And it's all because you don't feel like you're ready to handle what comes next. And if you're not able to handle what comes next because you are overwhelmed in the moment, that's when you freeze. And it costs you at all points during the sales process. Costs you when you're making calls. If you're not sure you can handle what comes next, you don't pick up the phone and call. It happens when you're in the presentation. If you're not sure you're not going to blow it, you're going to hold back. Your energy is going to fluctuate and you're not going to connect with the customer. It happens when it's time to close. You're not going to push back. You're not going to simplify it because you're going to struggle with not knowing what to do when something happens. Nowhere does it show up more than when you get pushback. There's an old adage in sales that the sales don't really start until you get your first objection. And that is so true. And far too often, we're not ready for it. There's no question when you get to this point, you lose sales. When somebody comes back and says, I need to think about it, you know you're done, but you don't know what to do. When somebody says advertising doesn't work for me, you know it's BS, but you're not sure what to do. When somebody says, I get all my business from word of mouth, you don't want to call them an idiot. You want to, but you're not sure how to do that in a way that is nice and professional. And you absolutely know when somebody says, I need to talk to my wife, that the answer is going to be no. And all too often, that's where the deal ends. It's where it all dies. Because you froze instead of moving forward. Everything about that changes when suddenly you understand why they're saying what they're saying. The words crossing their lips and their real reason for not wanting to move forward, either with an appointment or a sale, has nothing to do with what they're saying. Once you start to recognize that and realize how the customer's Sleary, because they're struggling with it too, is stopping them from moving forward and taking action, you can learn to navigate it. The next place when it all starts to work in your favor is when you fully understand how your product actually drives their ROI. And I don't mean just gets them more leads. Advertising is so much more. Good marketing is so much more. And there are hundreds of ways you can help that customer grow its profit without getting them a single new customer. And because of all of this, you start to trust yourself in that moment. And the moment that trust builds, you stop freezing. Because you freeze because you don't trust yourself. And when you do, you stop. That's why I created a new course called Mastering Objections. Now, when we think of objections, we generally think at the end when you ask for the sale and they say something. This course does focus on those, but the tools actually apply to all of those situations where you might freeze during the sales process. Now, this course is specifically designed for you. It is for the person who sells advertising in the local neighborhood magazine. As I've said many times, there is no better tool for helping a small business than a campaign in a local targeted neighborhood magazine. Through this course, you will learn to think clearly, respond confidently, and never freeze again. And we do that by first making sure you know and can navigate what objections really mean. Sometimes the words and the real root cause of their objection aren't the same. And when you can learn to recognize the difference, you have the advantage. Next, we really teach you how you can help your business make profit. When you can stop thinking of your ad as only a way to get them more leads and can help them understand the real impact that your magazine has on driving their profit, your confidence level is going to go through the roof. And when you have all this in place, you're going to respond clearly and confident in that moment, in any moment, without hesitation. This is how you solve the Sleary problem. When your fear of not being able to handle what comes next vanishes, you will see immediate changes in your action and the results of those actions. To take this course, just go to the jpbusinessacademy.com/mastering objections. The beauty of this is one extra sale that you make because of this information in this course, you have returned your investment and then some. To make sure you know this is for you, I've got a 21-day money-back guarantee. If you take the entire course, start to finish, and you can honestly tell me that you learn nothing that will help you close a deal, I'll give you your money back. Now, in addition to that, if there is an objection that comes up that you don't feel like is addressed in the course, or maybe you can't figure out how to apply the things we learn in this course to that objection, there's ongoing objection support. I'm going to do regular calls for anybody that purchased the course where they can pose questions about objections, and we'll work them out together and we'll figure out the solution. You'll have lifetime access. I will encourage you to go back to the course every time you feel yourself starting to go back into those old grooves, because you will. Fighting Sleary is a constant battle. You go back to the course and suddenly the water starts flowing again. If you freeze at any point during the sales process, this course is your next step.